The gold ensures loyalty.
Study hard. Work hard. Save money.
Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has not only struggled for gold, territory, or tangible resources. The real battle has always been fought in an invisible, subtler, and infinitely more powerful field: control over the systems that determine who thrives and who languishes in obscurity. But what if I told you that your poverty is not accidental? That there is an invisible architecture, meticulously built over centuries, designed specifically to keep you exactly where you are? Pause for a moment. Look around you. How many people do you know who work tirelessly, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and yet can barely pay their bills? Now think of those who seem to accumulate wealth without apparent effort, whose money makes more money while they sleep. This is not a cosmic coincidence. It is the result of hidden rules that the rich understand and enforce, while the rest of the population remains blindly obedient to a completely different set of instructions. The great thinkers of history have always known about this division. Adam Smith, in his seminal work The Wealth of Nations, did not write only about economics. He unraveled the invisible mechanisms through which capital concentrates and perpetuates itself. But Smith was being diplomatic. He knew truths that he could not fully publish. Nietzsche was more direct. He understood that society creates two classes of human beings: the creators of values and the consumers of values. The former write the rules of the game. The latter spend their entire lives playing a game whose rules they do not know, doomed to lose from the start. He called it herd morality versus lord morality. And you, my dear viewer, have been conditioned from birth to be part of the herd. Think about the teachings you have received. Study hard and get a good job. Work hard and you will be rewarded. Save your money and one day you'll be rich. These are the instructions given to the flock. Meanwhile, there is a completely different set of principles that the truly rich follow, principles that are never taught in schools, never appear in superficial motivational speeches, and are actively obscured by the dominant narrative. Throughout this video, we're going to do something that few have the courage to do. We're going to lay out the full architecture of economic inequality. Not through childish conspiracy theories or impotent resentment, but through a cold, philosophical, and historically grounded analysis of the real mechanisms that separate the rich from the poor. Let's dive into the principles that govern capital accumulation, drawn not only from economists but from military strategists, philosophers of power, behavioral psychologists, and the very architects of the modern financial system. You'll learn the 7 hidden rules that keep you trapped, and more importantly, how to recognize and neutralize them. But I leave you with a warning: this knowledge is disturbing. You will no longer be able to live in comfortable ignorance once you understand it. By the end of this video, you'll see the economic system with completely new eyes. And this is both a liberation and a burden. Are you ready? So let's get started. Hidden Rule 1. The illusion of value by time. The first and most devastating rule that imprisons the masses is this: they have taught you to trade time for money, when the rich trade systems for multiplication. This is the fundamental difference between wealth and poverty. The poor sell hours. The rich build multiplication machines. In the educational system, the corporations, the whole social structure is designed to convince you that the first option is not only normal, but virtuous. Karl Marx, often misunderstood and distorted, identified something profound in his analysis of capital. He called it surplus value, the concept that the worker always produces more value than he receives in wages. But what Marx was really describing was a structural asymmetry in the way different classes participate in the economic system. When you work by the hour, you're stuck in a linear function. 10 hours of work equals 10 hours of pay. There is no scalability. There is no leverage. You reach a natural ceiling determined by the limited amount of hours a human being can physically work. The rich, on the other hand, operate in exponential functions. They create a system once, a company, an investment, an intellectual property, and that system continues to generate returns regardless of their physical presence. Jeff Bezos doesn't pack boxes on Amazon. He built a system that packs millions of boxes daily. This is the true financial education that never reaches public schools, the difference between linear work and exponential work. The Medici family was not the oldest, nor the noblest of Italian families. But it has become the richest and most powerful. How? While other merchants bought and sold goods in person, traveling from town to town, risking their lives on bandit-infested roads, trading their physical time for profit, the Medici had a revolutionary insight. They created the modern banking system. Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici was not carrying gold. He created bills of exchange. He did not travel in person. He established a network of representatives. He didn't keep his money. He lent it at compound interest to the kings and popes of Europe. While a conventional merchant could make, say, 10 profitable trips a year, limited by his own time and energy, the Medici banking system executed thousands of transactions simultaneously. Their money worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in dozens of different cities. Within a generation, the Medici had gone from modest bankers to patrons of the arts, financiers of popes, and effectively rulers of Florence. And most fascinatingly, Cosimo de' Medici worked few hours a day in his later years, while his fortune continued to grow exponentially. This is the power of the transition from linear to systemic work. Look at the modern setting. A highly skilled surgeon, who has studied for 15 years, can earn $300,000 a year. Impressive, right? But it is fundamentally limited. There are only so many surgeries that a person can perform. Now compare it to an average software developer who creates a simple application. This app can be sold infinite times without additional production cost. A single individual can create a product that reaches billions of people. Notch created Minecraft essentially by himself and sold it for $2.5 billion. The difference is not necessarily skill, education, or effort. It is structural understanding. The surgeon operates in a linear paradigm. The programmer operates in an exponential paradigm. And here's the insidious part: the educational system glorifies the surgeon. He tells young people, study hard, get a good job, work hard. These are all euphemisms for, accept linear prison. Sell your hours. Don't question it. The rich, meanwhile, teach their children something completely different. They teach you about assets versus liabilities, active versus passive income, work on the business versus work on the business. Two completely different educations for two completely different classes. Tactic 1. Stop asking how much do they pay per hour, and start asking how much does this job teach me about building systems? Every job should be seen as a temporary school where you learn transferable skills, not as a final destination. Tactic 2. Dedicate at least 20% of your time, 4 hours if you work a 20-hour week, 8 hours if you work 40, to building something that can scale. An online channel, a skill you can teach, a digital product, an automated service. Anything that doesn't require your physical presence for each unit of value generated. Most people spend 100% of their time in linear work and then wonder why they never leave their place. Hidden Rule 2. The tax of financial ignorance. The second hidden rule is brutal in its simplicity. The system is designed to penalize financial ignorance so efficiently that the poor pay literally more for everything, including and especially for money. Read that again. The poor pay more for money than the rich. This is not a metaphor. It is a mathematical reality of the modern financial system. There is a concept in behavioral economics called the poverty tax. He describes how being poor is structurally more expensive than being rich. But we go beyond the surface. The modern banking system is a machine for extracting wealth from the lower classes to the upper classes. And it works through an ingenious mechanism, intentional complexity combined with poor education. Think of it as a maze. The rich are born with the map. The poor are placed at the entrance without instructions and punished for every navigational error. And here's the most pernicious part: the system is designed to appear neutral, even benevolent, while systematically sucking resources from the uninformed. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, famously said, "There is a class war, of course. But it's my class, the rich class, that's making the war. And we are winning." This is a rare admission from someone inside the system. Let me tell you the story of two brothers, a modern parable that perfectly illustrates this rule. João and Pedro were born into the same middle-class family. Both got similar jobs at the age of 22, earning practically identical salaries. But their financial trajectories diverged dramatically. João did what most do. At 25, he bought a new car financed. The interest rate was only 12% per year. At 28, he financed furniture for his apartment. By 30, he had 3 credit cards with revolving balances, paying 18 to 23% monthly interest. He was building credit, as financial advisors put it. Pedro, on the other hand, had a different upbringing. His father taught him a fundamental principle: never be the debtor, always be the creditor. Pedro bought a used car in cash. He lived in a smaller apartment. But at the age of 25, he began investing $500 a month in low-cost index funds. Fast forward 30 years. John, now 55, paid approximately $340,000 in interest over the course of his life. $340,000. This is money that he worked to earn, that was extracted from him, and that he will never see again. That money flowed upwards, to the banks, to the creditors, to the rich. Pedro, at the same age, has an investment portfolio worth approximately $800,000. The same $500 a month, invested consistently, grew exponentially through the power of compound interest working for him, not against him. The net difference? More than $1 million. Same origin. Same earning capacity. Massive difference in result. And it all comes down to a single variable: financial understanding. This principle is operating now, at this very moment, in a number of subtle ways. Consider credit cards. The poor use them to finance expenses, paying exorbitant interest. The wealthy use them to accumulate airline miles, cashback, and purchase protections, paying off the balance in full every month. The same instrument, two completely opposite results based only on knowledge. Or consider real estate. A person with no financial education buys the largest house that the bank approves, based on a 30-year mortgage. She pays almost double the value of the house over time due to interest. A financially educated person understands that a home is, in most cases, a liability, not an asset. She may choose to buy a smaller property, aggressively pay off the principal to eliminate debt quickly, or even rent while investing the difference in assets that truly appreciate and generate income. The payroll loan and advance payment of salary companies are another grotesque example. They charge rates that are equivalent to 300, 400, even 1,000% annualized interest. Your customers? Exclusively the poor and financially desperate. It's pure but legal extraction. And who regulates these industries? Politicians who receive campaign donations from these same financial institutions. The loop is closed. Tactic 1: reverse the flow of interest. If you have credit card debt, this is your absolute number one priority. There is no such thing as an affordable investment that returns 18 to 23% per year consistently. Therefore, paying off credit card debt is literally the best investment you can make. Each reel of debt eliminated is a reel that stops bleeding interest. Tactic 2: dedicate 3 months to systematic financial education. It doesn't have to be formal. Read 3 fundamental books: Rich Dad, Poor Dad for Mindset, The Intelligent Investor for Principles, and The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind for Psychology. Learn the difference between assets and liabilities. Understand compound interest, both for you and against you. Understand that the banking system is a sophisticated adversary, not a neutral ally. Hidden Rule 3: time is the enemy of the poor and the ally of the rich. The third hidden rule completely defies what you've been taught about patience and hard work. In the current system, time works against the poor through inflation, depreciation, and opportunity cost, while it works in favor of the rich through appreciation, compound interest, and leverage. There is a fundamental temporal asymmetry in the modern economy. And it is absolutely intentional. In physics, there is the concept of entropy, the natural tendency of all organized systems to deteriorate towards disorder. The universe moves inexorably from order to chaos. Usable energy dissipates. Structures crumble. The same principle applies to the wealth of the poor, but not to the wealth of the rich. And this is not natural. It is architectural. When you put money in a traditional savings account, which pays maybe 2% a year, and the actual inflation is 4 to 6% a year, you're losing purchasing power with each passing day. Your money is going into entropy. It's rotting. But when you own property, company stocks, or businesses, those assets tend to appreciate over time, often outpacing inflation. Your resources are accumulating, not dissipating. Economist Thomas Piketty wrote a 600-page book documenting this phenomenon, R greater than G. The rate of return on capital, R, is historically higher than the rate of economic growth, G. Translating from economies, if you already have money invested, it grows faster than the economy as a whole. If you depend only on salary, economic growth, you are left behind. This is the fundamental mechanism through which inequality increases not by active conspiracy, but by structural design of the system. To truly understand this principle, we need to look at an extreme case, Argentina in the 1970s and 1980s, when it experienced hyperinflation. Imagine waking up to find that the money you've worked all month to earn is worth half of what it was worth yesterday. At the height of the Argentine crisis, inflation reached more than 3,000% a year. People literally rushed to spend their paycheck on payday, because if they waited a week, they wouldn't buy anything. But here's the fascinating thing. While the Argentine working class was completely devastated, losing decades of savings, a small elite not only survived, but prospered. How? They held their assets in US dollars and physical property. They had access to international bank accounts. They owned companies whose products could be repriced daily. In other words, they had protections that the masses did not have. An Argentine university professor who kept his salary in pesos saw his life savings evaporate. A businessman who owned a commercial building in Buenos Aires saw his asset retain real value, because rent was adjusted for inflation and physical property did not disappear. Same crisis. Completely opposite results based on the way wealth is maintained. You don't need hyperinflation for this principle to operate. He is working against you now, in a more subtle but equally devastating way. Consider this: since 1971, when the US dollar was completely depegged from gold, the end of the Bretton Woods Standard, the dollar's purchasing power has fallen by more than 85%. What does this mean practically? It means that if your grandfather kept $10,000 in a safe in 1971, that money would buy only 15% of what he bought then. But if he had invested that same $10,000 in the S&P 500 index, even with all the crises, crashes, and recessions, that investment would be worth more than $1 million adjusted for inflation today. This is the difference between holding wealth in paper money, which the poor do because it's safe and simple, versus holding wealth in productive assets, which the rich do because they understand the system. And look at the narrative that the system propagates: save your money. Save it for a rainy day. Be conservative. All of this advice ensures that you lose out to inflation. Meanwhile, the rich tell their children, money is garbage. Exchange it for assets as soon as possible. Tactic 1. Minimize the amount of wealth you hold in cash. Keep only what is necessary for emergencies, 3 to 6 months of expenses, and current transactions. Everything else must be converted into assets that historically outperform inflation: stocks of solid companies, real estate funds, commodities, even skills and education that increase their earning capacity. Tactic 2. Understand that security is often an illusion sold to the poor to keep them poor. The savings account that guarantees your money is ensuring that you lose purchasing power every year. The stable job you cling to may disappear tomorrow due to forces completely beyond your control. True security comes from diversification, adaptability, and ownership of real assets. This is a radically different mindset than what you've been taught, but it's the reality that the rich understand. Hidden Rule 4. Expertise is commodified, But synthesis is invaluable. The fourth hidden rule is particularly misleading. The modern education system trains you to be a replaceable expert, while the rich cultivate synthetic capabilities that make them irreplaceable. Let me be crystal clear, the education you receive is not designed to set you free. It is designed to make it a functional and interchangeable part in the economical machine. At the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, Frederick Winslow Taylor developed what he called scientific management, the idea of breaking down complex work into simple, repetitive tasks that anyone could learn quickly. This was revolutionary for mass production. But it had a profound side effect. It transformed artisan workers with holistic knowledge into expert operators with fragmented knowledge. A medieval shoemaker knew the entire process of making a shoe, from leather to the final product. A modern assembly line worker knows only how to tighten a specific screw. Which one has more negotiating power? Which one is more easily replaced? The modern education system is essentially a tailorist factory for creating skilled workers. You study accounting, or engineering, or law in a very specific area. You become very good at a very narrow thing. And then you discover that there are thousands of other professionals with the exact same skill set, all competing for the same jobs. The truly rich understand something different. They cultivate what I call synthetic advantage, the ability to connect knowledge from multiple domains in ways that create unique value. Steve Jobs was not the best engineer or the best designer or the best entrepreneur. But he could synthesize engineering, design, and business in a way that no one else could. This synthesis has created billions of dollars of value. Let's understand now about a man who embodies the power of synthesis, Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo was not just a painter. He was a painter, sculptor, architect, engineer, anatomist, cartographer, botanist, and inventor. And here's the crucial thing, his genius didn't come from being the best in any of these areas individually. It came from his ability to connect them. When Leonardo studied human anatomy, dissecting corpses by candlelight in secret cellars, an illegal practice at the time, he wasn't just learning medicine. He was learning how the body moves, how muscles and tendons interact. And he took this knowledge to his art. Look at The Last Supper or the Mona Lisa. The reason these paintings transcend others of the time is that Leonardo understood anatomy, the physics of light, the psychology of human emotion, and mathematical composition in an integrated way. He wasn't just applying painting techniques. He was synthesizing multiple domains of knowledge. When designing military fortifications for Cesare Borgia, he used principles of geometry, projectile physics, psychology of visual intimidation, and structural engineering. His fortifications were works of defensive art because he saw connections that pure specialists did not. And here's the part that connects to wealth. Leonardo da Vinci was extraordinarily well paid and sought after by the most powerful powers of his day. Why? Because he was irreplaceable. You could find 1,000 competent painters in Florence. You couldn't find another Leonardo. This dynamic is more relevant now than ever. We live in the era of extreme specialization, where doctors know only about a specific agency, lawyers know only one type of law, and engineers work only with a particular technology. And what happens? Artificial intelligence and automation are systematically eliminating specialized jobs. If your value comes from doing a repetitive thing really well, you're in direct competition with algorithms and robots. But consider profiles like Elon Musk. He understands physics, engineering, design, manufacturing, marketing, finance, and economies of scale. When it enters an industry, whether it's automobiles, space, or energy, it doesn't compete with existing rules. It synthesizes knowledge from multiple domains and rewrites the rules. Or consider Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater, the world's largest hedge fund. Dalio is not just a financial trader. He studies economic history, cognitive psychology, systems theory, and even programming. He has created an investment system that synthesizes all of these domains, producing returns that pure experts cannot replicate. The synthetic advantage is the new form of economic protection. While the expert asks how do I get better in my field, the synthesizer asks what knowledge from seemingly unrelated areas can I combine to create something unique. Tactic 1. Implement what I call the 70-20-10 rule for learning. 70% of your development time should be in your core area of competence. 20% must be in a complementary area. 10% must be in something seemingly unrelated. If you're a programmer, maybe the add-on is UX design, and the unrelated add-on is behavioral psychology or creative writing. The most valuable connections come from the unlikely intersections. Tactic 2. Consciously seek to synthesize knowledge. When you learn something in one domain, force yourself to ask, how does this apply in completely different areas? If you've learned about game theory and economics, how does it apply to interpersonal relationships? To military laws? A product design? The synthesis muscle is like any other, it strengthens with deliberate use. Pause for a moment and consider what we've already established. These are not abstract theories or empty philosophical speculations. It is the structural foundations that separate those who accumulate wealth from those who remain trapped in cycles of scarcity. You have learned that the exchange of time for money is a fundamental prison, while the rich build systems of multiplication. You have understood that the financial system systematically extracts wealth from the uninformed through intentional complexity and compound interest working against you. You have understood that time is an asymmetrical force, dissipating the wealth of the poor while amplifying the wealth of the rich. And you've discovered that specialization alone is a trap, while synthesis of knowledge creates irreplaceable value. These are the defensive pillars. This is your foundation to simply stop losing. But a foundation does not build an empire. Now we have entered more dangerous territory. The next 3 rules are not about protection. They are about active acquisition. They're about how those who already understand the game not only avoid the pitfalls, but actively manipulate the system in their favor. And here's the hassle, these tactics often contradict values you've been taught to hold sacred. Absolute honesty. Total transparency. Equity. The rich know that these are luxuries that only those already at the top can afford to perform publicly. What comes next is not for the morally weak. It is for those willing to see the world as it is, not as they have been taught it should be. If you're comfortable with your current level of wealth and influence, this is a good time to stop the video. If you're ready to dig deeper, let's continue. Hidden Rule 5. Asymmetric information is the only real advantage. The 5th hidden rule is perhaps the most brutal of all. In any economic transaction, the one who has superior information extracts value from the one who possesses inferior information. And the entire system is designed to keep you on the wrong side of that equation. Let that penetrate completely. Every time you buy, sell, invest, or trade, you are in an information war. And most of the time, you're missing out before you even start. Economist George Akerlof won the Nobel Prize for a seemingly simple paper called The Lemon Market. He described how in markets with asymmetric information, where one party knows significantly more than the other, the uninformed party inevitably pays too much or receives less. But Akerlof was being polite. What he actually described was a mechanism of systematic extraction. And this mechanism operates in practically every economic transaction you carry out. When you buy a used car, the seller knows about all the mechanical problems. You don't know. When you invest in stocks, corporate insiders know about future problems before they are publicly announced. You don't know. When you negotiate a salary, your employer knows exactly how much other employees earn and what the minimum is that you would accept. You're trading in the dark. Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the outcome of 100 battles. If you know yourself but don't know the enemy, for every victory you win you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Replace enemy with market or counterparty and you have the essence of modern economic warfare. And the system works tirelessly to keep you ignorant. There is a story about how the Rothschild family consolidated their fortune during the Napoleonic Wars. It was June 1815. All of Europe awaited the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo. If Napoleon won, the British economy would collapse. If Wellington won, markets would explode with relief. Fortunes would be made or lost depending on the outcome. Nathan Rothschild, operating out of London, had something that no other investor had, a network of private couriers superior to the government postal system. While official information would take days to cross the English Channel, the Rothschild homing pigeons and messengers were hours faster. When the battle ended with Napoleon's defeat, a Rothschild messenger crossed the Channel immediately. Nathan received the news a full day before any other investor in London. Now, here's where the story gets fascinating. Nathan did not immediately buy British stocks. That would be too obvious. Instead, he began selling massively, with an expression of desperation visible on the floor of the stock market. The other investors, seeing Rothschild, known as Europe's most well-connected financier, selling frantically, panicked. Rothschild knows something. Wellington must have lost. The market went into free fall. Everyone sold. Just when prices dropped to almost nothing, Rothschild agents quietly began buying huge amounts of shares through intermediaries. And then, when the official news came the next day confirming Wellington's victory, the market exploded upwards. Nathan Rothschild multiplied his already vast fortune in a single day. Was this a fraud? Technically, no. He didn't lie. He simply possessed superior information and used it with ruthless strategy. And this pattern has repeated itself thousands of times throughout history. You might think that in the modern world of instant information and strict regulations, that asymmetry no longer exists. You would be dramatically mistaken. Consider high-frequency trading, HFT. Companies invest hundreds of millions of dollars to bring their servers physically closer to the stock exchanges. Why? To take advantage of milliseconds in price information. They see your buy orders coming in and may buy ahead of you, selling to you at a slightly higher price. This is called front-running and is completely legal in certain ways. You're competing with these systems when you invest. Do you think you have a chance? Or consider the real estate market. When you search for a home, you use public websites that show listings from days or weeks ago. Professional investors have access to pocket listings, properties that never make it to the public market. They know people at banks who warn them about pre-foreclosures. They have software that analyzes sales patterns before you even know that an area is appreciating. Same transaction. Radically different information. Predictable result. And the most insidious of all, the financial education you receive is itself asymmetric information. Popular finance books, YouTube gurus, financial advisors who earn commissions, they all give you enough information to make you feel educated, but not enough to compete with real insiders. It's like teaching someone the rules of poker but not talking about tells, position betting, or pot odds, and then putting them at a table with pros. You know how the game works technically, but it will be systematically destroyed. Tactic 1. Reverse your information flows. Stop consuming free and commoditized information, mainstream news, free analysis, generic advice. Start paying for high-quality expert information. Subscribe to professional research reports. Join paid communities where serious investors share analysis. Hire expert consultants for important decisions. Yes, that costs money. But superior information is the only investment that always pays off. Tactic 2. Develop your own primary sources. If you're considering investing in a company, don't read third-party reviews. Read the original financial reports. Better yet, visit the company, meet the executives, observe the operations in person. If you are buying property, do not rely only on websites. Talk to locals, visit multiple times at different times, research urban development plans at the City Hall. Primary information is always superior to second-hand interpretations. Tactic 3. Build your own intelligence network. The truly rich do not operate alone. They cultivate relationships with people who have access to different information. A lawyer who knows about regulatory changes before they are public. A tech executive who sees trends emerging internally. an urban planner who knows where new infrastructure will be built. These relationships take years to develop, but they are invaluable. Remember, you don't need to know everything. You need to know people who know specific things. Hidden Rule 6. Leverage is both accelerator and dynamite. The sixth hidden rule is paradoxical. The mechanism that separates the ultra-rich from the simply rich is leverage, but it is also the mechanism that destroys millions. The wealthy understand how to use leverage asymmetrically, maximizing potential gain while limiting downside risk. The poor, when they try to use leverage, do the opposite. Leverage is not inherently good or bad. It's an amplifier. If you know what you're doing, it multiplies your results. If it does not know, it multiplies its destruction. Archimedes famously said, "Give me a long enough lever and a fulcrum, and I will move the world." This was not just a physical metaphor. It's a profound truth about power and ability. In finance, leverage means using borrowed funds to amplify returns. But there is a subtle art here that separates masters from amateurs. Nassim Taleb, the Lebanese-American thinker who wrote The Logic of the Black Swan, introduced the concept of risk asymmetry. He argues that the optimal strategy in life is neither to minimize risk altogether nor to maximize it recklessly, but rather to look for situations where the potential gain is massively disproportionate to the potential loss. In other words, risks where, if you lose little, but if you win, you gain immensely. This is what Taleb calls barbell options or dumbbell strategy, extremely conservative in 90% of your decisions, extremely aggressive in the 10% where asymmetry favors you. The rich apply this principle to leverage with surgical precision. The poor typically do just the opposite, taking big risks where asymmetry works against them. John D. Rockefeller became the richest man in modern American history, adjusted for inflation, richer than Bezos or Musk, through masterful use of asymmetric leverage. Early in his career, Rockefeller was in the oil refining business in Cleveland. It was a chaotic industry, hundreds of small refiners competing, volatile prices, no economies of scale. Rockefeller saw an opportunity. He realized that whoever controlled distribution, not production, but transportation and refining, would control the entire industry. So he did something brilliant and brutal. He went to the railroads that transported oil and made a deal: give me massive transportation discounts. In return, I guarantee consistent volume and exclusivity. The railroads agreed because guaranteed volume was better than unstable revenue. But here's the leverage: with drastically lower shipping costs than its competitors, Rockefeller could charge less and still have higher margins. He started buying competitors. To those who refused to sell, he simply destroyed them through price wars, selling below cost temporarily until they broke. Within a few years, he controlled 90% of American oil refining. He had used leverage, transportation discounts, to create a snowball effect that was unstoppable. And here's the crucial thing: if his plan initially failed, he had limited risk. He would still have a functional refining business. But if it worked, the gain was unlimited. Perfect asymmetry. Compare this to how the average person uses leverage: buying a house they can barely afford with maximum mortgage, risk concentrated in a single asset, using credit cards to finance lifestyle, leverage with guaranteed cost and no potential return, or taking out loans for education with no clear return strategy. In all these cases, the asymmetry is reversed. Great downside risk, uncertain return. Exactly the opposite of what the rich do. In the modern world, leverage takes many forms beyond simply borrowing money. Consider audience leverage. An influencer with 1 million followers can launch a product and instantly reach a massive market. He is leveraging accumulated attention. A person without an audience trying to launch the same product has to pay dearly for each customer. Same idea, radically different results due to leverage. Or consider code leverage. A programmer can write software once and sell it infinite times. He is leveraging intellectual work. A manual worker needs to repeat physical effort for each unit of value created. Elon Musk is perhaps the modern master of asymmetric leverage. It uses capital from investors to build companies, financial leverage. It uses the appreciation of its shares as collateral for more loans, leverage over leverage. It uses its audience of millions on Twitter for free marketing, leverage attention. Uses technology to multiply the effect of your team, operating leverage. If one of his companies fails, he has others. If a project fails, it has dozens. He structured his life to have potentially unlimited gains and limited losses through compartmentalization. But look at the average worker, all of his economic security is tied to a single employer. If you lose your job, you lose everything. All your savings are in a single type of asset. No gain leverage, maximum loss exposure. Structurally condemned. Tactic 1. Never use leverage, debt, loans, for consumption or depreciable assets. This is the golden rule that the poor constantly violate. Financed cars, clothes on the credit card, electronics and installments, all this is negative leverage. You pay interest for something that loses value. The wealthy use leverage exclusively for assets that appreciate or generate income, commercial real estate, businesses, investments. Tactic 2. Build option leverage into your life. Structure situations where you have limited exposure to losses but significant exposure to gains. Practical examples: learn a high-demand skill at night while keeping your job, risk a few hours of sleep, gain potentially new career or additional income. Create online content consistently, risk time, gain audience potential, and massive monetization. Network aggressively, risk a few social hours, gain connections that can transform your career. Small investments in yourself with disproportionate return potential. Tactic 3. Apply Taleb's barbell principle. Be extremely conservative with your base, extremely aggressive at the margins. 80 to 90% of your resources must be in relative safety, proven skills, stable investments, reliable income. But the remaining 10 to 20% should be in high-risk/high-reward bets where, if they work, they completely change their trajectory. Most do the opposite, take foolish risks with their security base while being too conservative on opportunities for real transformation. Hidden Rule 7. The economic system is a negative-sum game for participants, positive-sum for architects. The seventh and final hidden rule is the most fundamental of all. There is an absolute difference between playing the game and creating the game. 99% of people spend their lives trying to win within the established rules. 1% redraws the rules in their favor. And here's the truth that no one wants to admit: the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed. And you weren't designed to be the beneficiary. Michel Foucault, the French philosopher who studied power and systems of control, had a concept called governmentality, the idea that the most effective forms of power are not exercised through direct coercion, but through the construction of systems that make people govern themselves according to the interests of the powerful. You don't need guards and guns when you can build an economic system where people voluntarily behave the way you want. Where they see their own actions within the system as free choices, never questioning the structure of the system itself. This is the deepest level of control. And that's exactly where we live. Think about how the current system works. You are encouraged to accumulate debt for education, benefiting financial institutions, to buy a house that is too big, benefiting banks and real estate, to invest through managed funds, benefiting asset managers who charge fees, to hold retirement in 401k accounts with limited options, benefiting selected financial institutions. At each point, you believe you are making rational choices for your benefit. But the structure of choices was designed by others, for the benefit of others. To truly understand this rule, we need to examine one of the most consequential moments in modern economic history, the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Prior to 1913, the United States did not have a central bank. There were boom and bust cycles, but the system was relatively decentralized. Then, in November 1910, something extraordinary happened. A group of men, representing 1/6 of the world's total wealth at the time, met secretly on Jekyll Island, Georgia. Among them, representatives of the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the European Rothschilds, and other elite bankers. For 10 days, they wrote a proposal for an American central bank. But they couldn't call it a banker's bank or a system for protecting private financial institutions. So they called it the Federal Reserve, making it sound governmental and public. They wrote in the bill that it would be used to stabilize the economy and protect citizens. 3 years later, in 1913, during the Christmas holidays when most congressmen were not present, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. What was actually created? A system where private banks have gained the exclusive right to create money out of thin air, lend that money to the U.S. government with interest, and control the interest rates of the entire economy. Since then, the U.S. dollar has lost more than 96% of its purchasing power. But for the banks that are part of the Federal Reserve System, it was the greatest wealth generator ever created. They have literally redrawn the rules of the economic game in their favor. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented. Edward Griffin wrote a meticulously researched 600-page book called The Creature from Jekyll Island with thorough documentation. The point is not that there is a conspiracy. The point goes much deeper. Those with enough power don't have to break the rules. They simply rewrite the rules. This principle is now operating on a massive scale, but in such normalized ways that you probably don't even realize it. Consider modern technology platforms. Facebook, Google, Amazon, these companies don't win within the existing economy. They create entire economies where they set the rules. Amazon isn't just a retailer competing with other retailers. It's a platform where millions of sellers compete, and Amazon writes the rules, collects fees, and simultaneously competes against its own sellers using internal sales data. Jeff Bezos didn't play the retail game better than others. He created a new game where he is the owner of the field, the referee, and one of the players. Facebook does not sell products. Sell attention. But more fundamentally, it has created a system where billions of people voluntarily produce free content, which Facebook monetizes. People on Facebook think they're using a free tool. In reality, they are the product being sold to advertisers. Or consider the Chinese social credit system, which is gradually being rolled out. It's not primarily about government surveillance, although that's also the case. It's about creating a system where desired behavior is rewarded with access to credit, travel, opportunities, and unwanted behavior is punished with restrictions. People govern themselves according to the rules, not because they are forced, but because the incentive system has been redesigned. In the United States, the system is more subtle but no less effective. Your credit score, your health data, your employment history, your social media presence, all of these are being used to determine what opportunities you have access to. And who controls these systems? Private corporations. The difference between rich and poor is not fundamentally about hard work or intelligence. It's about being in the position of creating systems versus being subject to systems created by others. Tactic 1. Change your fundamental question from how do I turn the game in my favor, to what completely new game can I create? This is a profound mental leap. It means stopping competing in saturated markets and starting to create new markets. Don't be another personal trainer competing for local clients. Create an online platform that connects trainers with clients. You've just moved from gamer to platform architect. Don't be a freelance graphic designer anymore. Create a template or tool that other designers can use. You've created a product that scales. Don't be another investor buying stocks. Create a company that can eventually go public. You're not buying pieces of someone else's game, you're creating your own. Tactic 2. Build platform property whenever possible. This means creating systems where others create value and you capture a percentage. Scalable examples: online marketplace in any niche where you charge per transaction, software as a service, SaaS, where you solve a recurring problem for a monthly fee, paid community where you provide access but members create most of the value through networking with each other, content channel where you attract audience and monetize through multiple streams, ads, sponsorships, products, courses. The pattern is always the same. You build the infrastructure, others participate by creating value, you extract a fee for providing the system. Tactic 3. Understand that regulation isn't your enemy, it's your opportunity to create competitive cesspools. This requires counterintuitive thinking. Most see regulations as barriers. The truly wealthy see regulations as opportunities to establish barriers to entry. If you can navigate regulatory complexity that others can't, you've created a defensible advantage. If you can influence how regulations are written, through lobbying, industry associations, or simply being first, you can literally write the rules in your favor. That's why large companies often support certain regulations, not because they're altruistic, but because they know that small competitors can't afford the costs of compliance. You don't have to be a giant to use this principle. Any area with high regulatory complexity, health, finance, construction, food, offers opportunities for those willing to master the system of rules that others avoid. We have reached the end of this journey, but do you realize that this is only the beginning of yours? Because knowledge without application is merely intellectual entertainment. And what you just got wasn't entertainment. It was a map of the royal territory. Let me be absolutely clear about something that may have caused discomfort throughout this video. I'm not saying that this system is fair. I'm not saying it's moral. I'm not defending it as the way the world should be. I'm simply describing what the world is like. You have a choice now. The same choice that everyone faces when receiving true knowledge. You may reject this information because it contradicts values that you have been taught to hold sacred. You may become resentful and bitter, blaming the system for your situation. Or you can accept the reality of the game, learn the real rules, and use that knowledge to improve your position. The recap of the 7 rules. Let's consolidate what you've learned. Rule 1. The system trains you to trade time for money, linear, limited, while the rich build multiplication systems, exponential, unlimited. Your task is to gradually transition from our salesman to system builder. Rule 2. Financial ignorance is actively penalized through compound interest working against you, inflation dissipating your purchasing power, and intentional complexity extracting value. Real financial education is not taught, it must be sought. Rule 3. Time works against the poor, dissipating value through inflation and depreciation, and in favor of the rich, multiplying value through appreciative assets. You should convert wealth from paper money to real assets as soon as possible. Rule 4. Isolated specialization makes you replaceable. Synthesis of multidisciplinary knowledge makes you irreplaceable. Cultivate strategic breadth, not just specialized depth. Rule 5. Asymmetric information is the only real advantage in economic transactions. Those who know more extract value from those who know less. Obsessively invest in superior sources of information. Rule 6. Leverage is an amplifier, it multiplies both success and failure. The rich use leverage asymmetrically, limited risk, unlimited gain. The poor do the opposite. Structure each decision for favorable asymmetry. Rule 7. There is a fundamental difference between playing within established rules and creating the rules. 99% compete in the game. 1% creates games. Your ultimate goal should be to transition from participant to architect. These 7 rules are not sequential, they are simultaneous. You don't master one before moving on to the next. You work on all of them continuously, at different levels of sophistication as your capacity grows. And here's what no one tells you, there is no finish line. The truly rich do not arrive at some final destination where they can relax. They understand that wealth is a dynamic game, not a static state. The rules are constantly changing. New opportunities emerge. Old strategies stop working. But now you have something that most will never have, clarity. You see the architecture. You understand the mechanisms. Not perfectly, no one understands perfectly. But you have the map, where others walk blindly. The responsibility of knowledge. I end with a final warning, because it would be irresponsible to give you these tools without moral context. Unprincipled power is destructive, not just to others, but to yourself. The most miserable rich I know are those who have mastered the economic game but lost their souls in the process. They have wealth, but they have no purpose. They have power but they do not have peace. Use this knowledge to improve not only your economic position, but to create real value in the world. Build businesses that actually solve problems. Create systems that elevate others, not just extract from them. Accumulate wealth not as an end in itself, but as a tool for greater freedom, impact, and meaning. Nietzsche, who we mentioned at the beginning, had a concept called will to power. Most interpret this as domination over others. But what Nietzsche really meant was something deeper, the will to master oneself, to overcome one's limitations, to create values where before there was only emptiness. This is the highest application of knowledge that you have received today. Not just to get rich, but to become the kind of person who deserves wealth. Someone who uses it well. Someone who understands that true power doesn't come from how much you accumulate, but from how much you can create and contribute. If this video resonated with you, if something sparked while watching, don't let this be just another piece of content that you consume and forget. Knowledge without action atrophies and dies. Choose one of the 7 rules. Only one. And implement something concrete in the next 7 days. Not something grandiose, something small but real. If it's rule 1, dedicate 2 hours this week to start building something that can scale. If it's rule 2, read the first 3 chapters of a foundational finance book. If it's rule 5, identify an area where you're operating with inferior information and invest in improving it. Small action. But real action. Because the distance between knowing the way and walking the way is where most people remain stuck forever. And then, 7 days later, choose another rule. And another. Build momentum through consistent implementation, not through dramatic, unsustainable transformation. There's a reason why this knowledge is not widely disseminated. It's not because it's secret in the sense of being hidden in locked vaults. It's because it's radically uncomfortable. It's easier to believe that the system is fair and you just haven't worked hard enough. It is more comfortable to think that success is linear: study, work, save, retire rich. It's psychologically less disturbing to assume that everyone is playing the same game by the same rules. But you now know differently. And you can't ignore that. This knowledge is both liberation and burden. Most will choose to deny or forget, because living with this awareness requires responsibility. It requires you to stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as an architect of possibilities. And that's terrifying, because it means that your success or failure is no longer the fault of the system, it's a consequence of your choices within your understanding of the system. The paradox of wealth. I end with a paradox that took me years to understand. The more you learn about wealth accumulation, the more you realize that wealth itself is a tool, not an end goal. The founders of Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, understood something profound. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome, but he wrote extensively about how wealth is only useful insofar as it gives you mental tranquility and the ability to live according to your values. Marcus Aurelius was literally emperor of Rome, with access to every wealth and power imaginable, but his meditations are about how all of this is transitory and meaningless compared to personal virtue and purpose. I'm not saying that money doesn't matter. Obviously it matters. We live in an economic system. Food, shelter, health, opportunity, everything requires resources. And anyone who tells you that money doesn't matter has probably never experienced true scarcity. But there is a difference between being financially capable and being obsessed with accumulation. Between using money as a tool for freedom and making money your master. The wisest among the rich I have known understand this. They play the economic game masterfully, but they don't let themselves be played by it. They accumulate not out of avarice, but out of strategy. And once they have enough, a personal definition that varies for each one, they redirect their energy to contribution, creation, and meaning. So I leave you with one final question, the same one I ask myself regularly: why do you want wealth? If your answer is simply to have more money, you will remain perpetually dissatisfied, because there will always be someone else with more. You will be running a race with no finish line. If your answer is to prove my worth to others, you're externalizing your self-esteem, putting it in the hands of observers who don't truly care about you. If your answer is for absolute security, you are chasing an illusion, because there is no absolute security in a dynamic, unpredictable system. But if your answer is to have freedom of choice, the ability to care for those I love, the resources to contribute meaningfully, and the autonomy to live up to my values, now you have a real target. One that can be achieved. One that, once achieved, brings genuine satisfaction. This clarity of purpose is what separates those who accumulate wealth and find misery from those who accumulate wealth and find fulfillment. In the last words of this video, I want to acknowledge something. What you just received was dense, philosophically complex, and occasionally disturbing. If you've made it this far, you're statistically rare. Most abandon challenging knowledge at the first discomfort. You may need to watch this video multiple times. Take notes. Research concepts I mentioned. And that's exactly what you should do. Deep knowledge is not obtained through passive consumption. It is mined through active engagement. The 7 rules I explored exist in layers. In the first exposure, you understand superficially. In the second, you start to see connections. In the third, you recognize patterns in your own life. By the 10th, you've internalized them so deeply that they become instinct. This is the job. Not just watching a video, but turning information into understanding, understanding into wisdom, and wisdom into action. So, my friend, our journey together ends here, but your personal journey is just beginning. You have the map. You know the territory. The tools were provided. There is only one thing left: to apply them. The system will continue to operate exactly as it has always operated. Hidden rules will remain hidden for most. The architecture of inequality will remain intact. Nothing changes simply because you watched a video. But you can change. Your relationship with money may change. Your understanding of power may change. Your choices may change. And over time, through better choices composed consistently, your reality can change. This will not happen overnight. It will not happen through a single brilliant insight or magic shortcut. It will happen through patient and disciplined application of fundamental principles, day after day, year after year. And maybe, if you play the game well, eventually you'll transcend from player to architect. From rule consumer to rule maker. From system subject to systems designer. But even if you never reach that high point, simply understanding how the game actually works already puts you at an advantage over 99% of the population who remain blindly obedient to instructions that guarantee mediocrity. Use this knowledge wisely. Use it ethically. Use it to uplift not only yourself, but those around you. And remember the words of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who had all power and wealth but valued wisdom above all else: the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts. You now have higher quality thoughts about how wealth really works. What you do with them defines everything. Don't forget to leave a like so that this video helps more people, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Watch the next video now.